Okay, look, before anyone accuses me of being a big old lying McLiarpants, I want to quickly say that yes, technically there is not a trans episode of House. Wait. While that might be true, I realistically have not lied to you any more than the show House lies to you and me, as you will discover from watching this video. So let's move the mouse away from that exit tab button. See, while the two main episodes that we are talking about here today, Skin Deep and The Softer Side, are not about transgender people and are in fact about intersex people, the show itself didn't seem to bother understanding the difference. There are parallels and analogies that exist within the narratives that I think are important to consider, and it especially builds the case for how this mainstream medical show completely lacks any updated modern medical understandings of conditions like being intersex. I also do have a few trans characters or trans mentions from the show to get into as well in their own chapter, so, you know, please hear me out. Alright, now that I have hopefully sufficiently justified myself to you, dear viewer, let's dive into talking about Skin Deep, Season 2's episode 13, and the one from which a clip did the rounds earlier this year, showing House cruelly mocking an intersex patient.
On his left testicle.
She's not a guy.
His DNA says you're wrong. The ultimate woman is a man. Nature's cruel, huh?
God, what a bad doctor, huh?
Dr. House is in the house, y'all. But at least we had each other. Oh, we got each other. Oh, we got each other.
So, as we jump into the episode, I just want to say that I will not be reviewing the whole thing. Instead, skipping to parts that interest us. All you really need to know going in is that Dr. House is an asshole from that time period when people were doing modern interpretations of Sherlock Holmes that portrayed him not as a reclusive addict with the perceptive capabilities that allowed him to solve strange or difficult cases, but as an antisocial narcissist with magical investigation powers. I'm not sure exactly who to blame for that changed approach to Sherlock, but I will be choosing Stephen Moffat because his Sherlock is a very, very easy target.
Thinks love's a mystery to me, but the chemistry is incredibly simple and very distractive.
But that's basically House. His job is to spit facts and truths that are hard to hear for his patients, and do it in such a way that it almost seems as if he is intentionally trying to mess with them, but he is also very, very right. No matter how terrible he might be, when it comes to medical stuff, House is generally shown to be correct. A stance that is relevant to this whole video, trust me.
Not one of which do I see on that board.
Because he doesn't have gout.
The episode Skin Deep's premise is that a 15-year-old model collapses on the stage at a fashion show after taking Valium and getting mad at another contestant, and House needs to figure out what the shocking twist to this medical anomaly might be. I know I promised I would try and speed my way to the actual stuff we give a shit about, but I really need to stop and wallow with you in the way that the show made House just continue doing non-stop creepy comments about this 15-year-old child.
Wow. Are you really 15?
Any idea what's wrong with her?
The looks of it. Not a single thing.
Like, that by itself should be enough to get him yoited from having this patient. Like, there really is this fucked up, persistent attitude in shows around men that makes their attraction to teenage girls not such a problem and just a natural part of being a dude that excuses some terrible IRL behaviour, and House right here is very indicative of that.
Since when do you voluntarily go see patients?
You've seen her?
She's 15.
Something in her eyes, kind of maturity.
It's very uncomfortable to watch, and that was clearly not their intention at the time of creation. Our first hintings towards the discovery come from the doctor's team having a talk about Alex, the patient at the heart of this, and trying to figure out stuff about her body, like why she has never menstruated, to which all the guys say that it must be caused by something unnatural. Though the only female doctor on the staff argues that it can just happen later than usual for some girls, which is true, and House continues to be a fucking creep.
Some girls don't start till they're mid to late teens.
Evidence to the contrary.
Perfectly sculpted, bountiful breasts.
I understand that you are meant to, hate but love House. His whole vibe is that, ooh, he's just so shocking, but there is such a charm to it. I have not reached that second part of the equation yet, so all I'm getting here is the shocking and creepy, not so much the charming. Also, all the guys join in on sexualizing this 15-year-old girl, which is just boys being boys, I suppose.
2 clinic hours says that those love apples are handcrafted by God.
You're wrong.
Could we talk about her health instead of her breasts?
We haven't even got to the intersex or trans confusion shit yet. This is just the blatant sexism that frolics across old TV like a gnome amidst a flower patch. Yeah, that's a real simile, sure. The House being terrible arc continues throughout this episode. Like when House challenges Alex's father on the fact that he, in House's mind at least anyway, must be sexually assaulting his daughter, because then that would exonerate House for rushing Alex into an emergency detox procedure. And during the entire discussion/fight in a bathroom, House keeps making lewd comments about how Alex is totally fuckable, so I mean, who could blame the dad for doing that?
So, what did you do to her?
Why would you possibly think?
To imagine anyone not wanting to nail her. It's a compliment.
15 years old. Creep-y. But this is still not getting us any closer to the intersex stuff. It's been half the fucking episode, and that's because the show is trying to set the scene of how Alex keeps having all these random symptoms like temporary amnesia and twitching, all of which seem to be happening for no clear reason.
We're gonna need you to keep still.
I am. What do you think that means?
And House does actually get the confession from the dad that he totally did sleep with his daughter, which makes the PTSD theory from House the current leading option for all of these symptoms, and the drug abuse that Alex was engaging in, and does the work of proving House right yet again.
What are you doing? You trying to trap me into saying
Do you love her enough to admit that you slept with her?
one time?
He may be a terrible doctor who creates a work environment that is far from healthy for either his co-workers or patients, but he does get results. Sort of. But then, when House is ready to dismiss this patient because, well, he got the result he wanted, and that's good enough for him, see the aforementioned bad doctor comment I said, his staff then reveal that Alex has medical jargon in her medical jargon that means there is a secret other cause for everything happening.
Elevated proteins in her CSF.
Daddy didn't do this to her, and neither did we.
Though, maybe someone should alert some kind of authority about Alex's father sexually assaulting her. He definitely should not be still allowed in the room with her. And of course, the only person trying to get that point across is the female doctor on House's team. The one that House keeps ignoring all the very valid points that she is making in pretty much every scene. But remember that House is always ultimately right, and that no matter what he might say or do, we just need to wait for him to solve the case in his own time and his own way. The rules just do not apply to him. Seriously, he gets found out by the hospital admin, and he mocks her the whole time that she's explaining how not okay this entire situation is that he allowed to happen, and it just doesn't seem like it's really getting through to him, and maybe she should just fire House.
Shielding a child abuser isn't covered. Cooperate with this investigation or I'll fire you.
I get it. It's his name on the show, but maybe it shouldn't be his name on the show. Also, the Australian doctor dude is taking House's side in an argument, and it sounds like that guy is defending the sexual abuser dad, which is not a good hill to die on at, any point in your career or personal life.
If this guy had known we had to report him, he'd never have told House the truth. She dropped out of high school to make millions of dollars. Why does she need more protection than some crack whore?
Hashtag Australian doctor from House cancelled, am I right? No, I don't know his name, and frankly, I don't really care. And House does his thing of figuring out that Alex has a tumour that is causing all these smoke screens, and figures out a way of testing to see if that theory is true, which is relatively safe, and it works.
But the twitching should stop right about now. Twitching does tend to stop at start. Let's be sure.
Sorry, why is the child abuser still in the room? Hello? Is anybody at this hospital doing their fucking job? And at this point, I am starting to suspect that I picked the wrong episode. Look, we've been through about 4 different twists at this point. A few failed attempts to fix what was wrong, and now it seems like we have it. And there has not been a single mention of any of the intersex stuff. In fact, putting it in now would be a cheap, disgusting play on that discovery that doesn't allow it to actually have any relevance or understanding built in, and is only there for the purpose of having the audience's shocked reaction to it. I mean, I get that this is House, and that is totally the kind of wheelhouse it plays in, so I suppose we should at least watch to the end of the episode just to make sure that it doesn't show up then. And a series of moments pass as Alex is seen to for this cancer that House claims she has. A little montage of medical stuff that is one of the reasons I presume people like watching medical shows. It's like how in legal shows they do montages of lawyer stuff happening, or in cop shows they do montages of them contributing to ruining the lives of minorities. It's the comfort aspect part of the voyeurism an amateur has in this esoteric world that they only get slight familiarity with, just enough information on it to nod along, but not knowledgeable enough to notice its flaws. Yeah. I got a degree in writing words. But it turns out that House was wrong again. Well, he was right about the tube and the medical stuff and how he can stop the twitching, but wrong about the cancer. Or was he? Because as House runs over every single place that cancer could reside within Alex's body, until the Watson to his homes tells him that they checked her ovaries and they were undersized, if anything.
Ovaries?
There's no mass. If anything, they're undersized.
Which leads to House standing up with purpose and marching right out of that room. And that purpose is to ditch the cancer theory and go back to the PTSD theory. And then the CPS person talks to both the dad and to Alex and comes away saying that, well, there is nothing she can do if both of them deny it happened because there's no evidence. Which makes the female doctor angry, so she storms in to confront Alex.
You have to tell her the truth.
Nothing happened.
You don't have to be afraid of him. They can protect you.
From what? Things are fine.
Which leads to us discovering from Alex that she got her own dad drunk to sleep with him. Specifically so that she could use that to do whatever she wanted.
I wanted to have sex with him.
Sexually attracted to your father?
By sleeping with him, now he lets me do whatever I want.
God, when is this intersex stuff happening? Oh God, actually wait, is this intersex revelation gonna be like a punishment thing? Like the show uses it to punish Alex for her sexually manipulating her own father? 'Cause if so, I don't even know how to feel about that, except worried.
After your father slept with you, you were traumatized.
My dad was last. I've never taken a run at your boss or a professor or somebody else you needed.
Alex also talks about how she slept with pretty much every adult in her life, all in the aim of getting something, whether it's grades or career advancements, and justifies it by saying that it's basically just the system. And here is the thing, in this case, Alex is still not to blame here for any of that. And the show's way of having her be this almost Machiavellian model who sees her beauty as a tool and weapon to succeed in life is A, representative of a wider problem with teaching young women that all they are is how they look, a problem that is emphasized in this very House episode by all the guys sexualizing this 15-year-old child as soon as she gets to the hospital.
Fashion model on the cover of magazines. Hold her up as the sexual ideal. The law says we can't touch her for 3 more years. How hypocritical is that?
And B, she is and was still a child. All of those guys she slept with should not have found themselves in that situation in the first place, and should have removed themselves the instance that it occurred. Unless she drugged her father without his knowledge so that he was catatonic and then slept with him, all it took was for him to get drunk to respond to his daughter's advances, and that is still very creepy.
You're the child. He's the adult. He has the responsibility.
I got him drunk. I had to get him drunk.
House then, finally, this late into the episode, gets his true revelation scene, which is based on another patient who is going through pregnancy with his wife due to some kind of syndrome that causes you to hormonally respond to pregnancy by doing it too.
Oh, shut up! Got yourself the perfect man, a woman. He's got more estrogen coursing through his veins.
Which makes House put Alex through another MRI to discover something shocking in Alex's body. Ooh, I wonder what it could be, and I wonder if House will handle this one well. The current money is on abso-fucking-lutely not. And he immediately proves that true by saying that it's not true that she has cancer. It's true that he has cancer on his testicle.
We found a tumor.
She has cancer?
Technically, no.
So it's not cancer?
No, it's cancer, but he has cancer.
And House then says that Alex's DNA proves that he is in fact a guy and not a girl, and that Alex is immune to testosterone, which makes her pure estrogen. And okay, House keeps referring to Alex as a he in this entire ending scene, but because I am not an absolute cunt, I will call her she, because that is clearly what she identifies with and has been treated as her entire life. Doing otherwise seems like a pretty fucked up choice that invalidates her in an attempt to enforce a biased perspective upon binary biological essentialism, an approach to medical practices that is harmful to a wide array of patients and denies the reality of the human biological spectrum that sees people develop a wide array of different characteristics removed from whatever gender they might be. House claims that this pure estrogen is why she has perfect breasts and enhanced female development. Because in his words,
because you're immune to testosterone. Your pure estrogen is why you get heightened female characteristics. The ultimate woman is a man.
God, he is a bad doctor. A truth that he emphasizes by then making a joke about the dad being a homo because he slept with his daughter, who in House's eyes is actually a man.
This is obviously a joke.
No, a joke would be me calling you a homo.
Alex obviously takes this in a rather unhappy fashion, freaking out and stripping naked to prove that she is a girl, and also that she is beautiful. I guess this all being part of her association with the world and with her gender identity as her attractiveness, so it's all sort of tied up together, and House is attacking all of it here with his denial of her womanhood, because she has genes that he interprets as man.
XY chromosome, a boy, develops into something else. Like you.
He also denies Alex's anger here by attributing it to just the cancer talking, rather than maybe considering she is angry because he walked in, told her she is a guy, called her dad who she slept with a homo, and has consistently denied that she is a woman at all. Maybe that would make somebody rather understandably quite upset. But remember, House is never truly wrong. He may fuck up, but he always gets the correct notion by the end. The notion that we should agree with as an audience.
How's the patient?
They sent him/her up for a psych visit.
Calling her him/her isn't really helping.
And the episode ends with House making another tasteless joke about how the dad won't be sleeping with him/her again because now it's gross. Which feels like it implies that thing I said earlier, where the dad was totally kind of at least going along with the sex with his own child, and that he could and should have stopped himself for all of the obvious reasons.
Good news is I don't think Dad's gonna be sleeping with him/her again. See, now it's gross.
Okay, so look. This episode was clearly not a great representation of intersex identity, but with the power of intersectionality, we can also see that it fucking sucked for a lot of other groups too by proxy. Firstly, the way that Alex's condition is forced into a binary perspective from our protagonist House, wherein the very discovery that she has male chromosomes, as he would call it, is enough to deny any part of her lived reality and her own perception of herself in favour of just flipping her gender switch to the other one. A simplistic approach to biology that goes in direct contradiction of what doctors and medical practitioners, especially genius ones, should know about their field of study and its history, and also an approach that is directly and indirectly reflective of harmful attitudes towards intersex people. The direct harmful attitude is the obvious thing of not allowing the intersex person any say whatsoever in how they see themselves. Instead, abusing biological essentialism to enforce your own biased view upon them, and indirectly by justifying the very invasive surgeries that come from that attitude, and are consistently practiced on intersex babies/children. Seriously, it happens a lot that doctors and parents will give the green light to cosmetic procedures that attempt to conform an intersex infant's body more to a binary biological perception of it, rather than allowing that individual the choice further down the line, all out of a fear of how it might impact on them, and the sense of disgust/worry/bigotry that permeates the cis-straight crowd who view anything abnormal as a cancer to be removed.
Sometimes a decision is based on a social idea of what that clitoris should look like.
There are situations that support doing that.
It's not trans people or intersex people doing the surgeries on children. It's the cis people, and it always has been. And in that comment, I hope that you see why I referred to this House episode as exhibiting transphobic attitudes as well, because the intersex community and the trans community do share a lot of the same targeted areas. We cross over in the way that our own identities, our gender, and our existence is policed by outside forces, especially those who feel threatened when it doesn't match to an established binary system. The biological essentialism that is abused to attack intersex people and intersex kids is also used to attack trans people and trans kids. This isn't to say that Alex is transgender, or that intersex people are transgender, and it isn't to say that transgender people are intersex. That can be true, of course, but in this case, what it is saying how these two communities can relate in the bigoted treatment of Alex as it pertains to our shared struggle. Now, this is not the only time that House did an intersex episode, though I think it would be hard to argue that Skin Deep even was an intersex episode. The intersex stuff was only really used as a surprise end twist and punishment for Alex, something to strip away her identity and attack this character who we had seen use her beauty as power, even if she was a child and it's not really on her for all those guys who slept with her. It's kind of still on the adults. But House did do another episode that featured intersex identities 3 whole seasons later with Season 5's episode 16, The Softer Side. Now, 3 years is a long time. There's a lot of time to learn, to grow, and to develop the way that you interact with minorities. And that's all stuff we're obviously going to be looking at here, because it will form the basis of an indictment on the series' treatment of the LGBTQIA+ community. So, what happens in The Softer Side? Well, a teenage boy collapses with severe pelvic pain during a basketball game, and gets brought in for House to figure out what has gone wrong. Though a bigger person involved in this episode is a character that we do briefly need to establish. I know, exciting stuff that we learn another medical person's name from this show. I wonder what makes them special. And that is 13, or Dr. Remy Hadley, a character introduced in Season 4, but more importantly, who we found out as an audience is canonically bisexual earlier in Season 5.
How does 13 know about it?
Apparently, she was with the patient last night.
3 a.m. Oh, yeah. 13. Go stick a needle in your girlfriend's pelvis.
Now, why would this be important to know? Well, because 13 takes an interest in this case, And also because she allows us to see how a queer doctor might be better suited to handle the case of a queer patient. Okay, yes, you got me, okay? I care about her name because she is one of us, alright? I'm not going to apologise for the fact that I will consistently bother learning the names of LGBTQ+ characters over straight or cis ones. Fuck them, and fuck you if you think it's a problem. But Softer Side gets far quicker to the point than its predecessor, something which does make it more of an intersex episode, because the intersex identity is a major part of its narrative, rather than a final scene twist, as the literal opening scene is of some parents in a dimly lit hospital room getting told that their child can have a normal life, even though the child does have genetic mosaicism, as surgery can fix up the ambiguous genitalia to make it look as if it were normal, and then you just never tell them while they're growing up. A decision to hide medical information that in no way, shape or form could totally have horrific ramifications if something goes wrong.
Do you regret choosing surgery for Pigeon?
Oh boy, yes. I know I felt what I was doing then was saving my child, and in all I was doing more harm than good.
We literally just talked about how intersex kids so often have this kind of medical intervention occur, and how it is based almost entirely on the pervasive notion that they need to conform and be normal, rather than expanding our definitions to include those who are born different, and that difference not being a concern except for cosmetically and socially. Oh wait, look, it does have a ramification almost immediately into this episode. And House gets the case on the condition that he not tell the child that the child is intersex and has this genetic mosaicism, as requested by the parents. Which, eventually, they are going to have to tell this kid about that. Because, I mean, it's sort of going to be around for the rest of their life, and they deserve to know. Oh, and in case you were worrying that House had perhaps gotten slightly more sociable or nice over the last 3 years, he begins telling his team about this case by saying this, and making it into a Dear Get 13's bisexuality.
Part girl, part boy, all 13's dream date.
House also takes this whole thing as an opportunity to pass the effort of lying about this kid's intersex condition onto his team, saying that he won't do it, but that they can. Something which 13 is clearly not comfortable with, because her own parent hid her Huntington's from her when she was younger.
My dad was the same way about me maybe having Huntington's.
Well, that was your experience.
Which I looked up, and not good. It's a genetic disorder that causes the brain to basically break down. Worrying stuff to have to think about. Anyways, the parents show up and begin talking about all the medical stuff that the team was just talking about, mentioning how they educated themselves on their child's condition over the past bunch of years, and we also find out that they are hiding the kid's testosterone tablets by calling them vitamins.
There's a note in here. We're supposed to refer to his testosterone shots as vitamins. His parents aren't just liars. They want us to be liars too.
This whole thing is at most a very temporary solution to the fabrication that they have told their child. And I get not wanting to burden them with this when they're growing up. But imagine how the child might feel discovering they've been lied to their whole life when you have to tell them as an adult. It just seems like a very short-sighted solution. There are a bunch of complications because this is a medical drama and the team try to figure out what could be going on. All while House is distant and dealing with his own thing this episode that we don't need to get into. It's unrelated to the intersex stuff and, you know, who cares?
Stop pretending to be asleep. We're not leaving. House.
And then one of the medical team drops the she-male word.
You're okay with this?
With what?
That we're considering a diagnosis unrelated to this kid being a she-male.
Now, this is actually a fun one. Maybe fun one's the wrong word. Because it showcases how a word can be offensive to multiple different groups. As she-male is used to target both intersex people and trans people. merely invoked as a method of denying them their gender identity with offensive slang that mixes the nature of their biological situation. It's not a cool thing to say is what I'm trying to get across here, and it's certainly not a medical term that a doctor should be using. I mean, at least House is calling the boy he and not she, which we can chalk up as a slight, tiny improvement over Skin Deep? Maybe? It's also fascinating to me here, watching the parents talking about the testosterone for Jackson, the intersex kid at the centre of this, because it is interesting how societally we are okay with genital confirmation surgeries and hormones for kids when it applies to intersex kids, not when they're trans.
Doctors today continue to do medically unnecessary cosmetic surgeries on these children to make their genitals look more typically male or typically female.
Like, it makes it very clear to me that the outrage is with the denial of the accepted cis-binary norm, because in that first case, it's conforming to it, and in the second, it's going against it. And one of those cases leads to firebomb threats against hospital in real life, and one doesn't.
Why did this woman make the threats? What's the motive?
There is a right-wing misinformation campaign about trans youths.
And this conversation is about the fact that Jackson might need to come off the testosterone because it could be dangerous and go on to blockers, which the parents both want to keep lying to him about, as well as being worried that they made the wrong choice when he was a baby and now he might never be a man. Because cis people constantly link biology to gender identity. Jackson going off testosterone isn't what's going to make him not a boy, and explaining his biological situation isn't going to mean having to tell him he is not a boy. It's merely returning the option to understand that into his hands. I mean, this all got fucked decades ago when that doctor at the start told them to do the cosmetic surgery, and the parents arguably did pick wrong, but in this case, both of the choices presented to them were the wrong choice. And these parents keep putting their head in the sand and signing off on more medical stuff to try and hand-wave away this underlying issue.
Just give him the med.
In a conversation between 13 and Jackson, we discover that Jackson doesn't really care for basketball, and that he wanted to do dance, but his mother forced him to do the more masculine pursuit rather than the feminine one for some reason, I assume, even though it was against the child's wishes. That binary coming in from the top rope like a fucking little nightmare again, and making these parents commit so hard to the choice they made of having a boy that they want that boy to do the boyiest of stuff to, I guess, keep them from questioning things or proving them wrong by being a girl. It seems more like anxiety and guilt as well as maybe a metaphor for the whole situation of this kid's relationship with his parents. And then the same doctor who made a comment about the she-male thing also comes in and starts talking some shit about bisexual people.
Probably for the best, you know, the bisexual thing and all. Before you guys got together, she was hooking up with a different girl every night. Long term, you really think you could compete with that?
Damn, dude, what the fuck is your problem with the queer community? And could you, like, stop? But his comments lead to the guy who 13 is currently sleeping with, a guy named Foreman. See, I can learn cis straight people's names if I want to. Well, he challenges 13 on whether she wants to sleep with other women still, to which she says yes. She then explains her stance on monogamy as one that leads to always wondering about other flavours of ice cream, and that whole analogy makes it sound like she's polyamorous, but just goes monogamous for the other person that she's dating.
Monogamy is like saying you're never gonna have any other ice cream flavor besides Rocky Road.
That's what some people do. Your choice as adults in a grown-up relationship are, at the end of the day, your choices. Anyway, what's going on with this intersex kid, huh?
I had no idea he felt this way.
Is there a therapist here that you can recommend?
It might help more if you talk to him.
Well, it turns out the child is both depressed and also has an infection, both of which are brought up to the parents, who are both still super worried about telling this kid what's the deal with him. not realizing that there isn't ever going to be a good time for this, and it's only going to keep getting worse the longer they wait.
Pigeon Pagonis was 18 when they learned the truth about their medical history.
It was like getting kicked in the stomach and just feeling like your whole life is a lie.
13 then goes against the wishes of the parents and tells the kid that whatever he is taking isn't vitamins, but that he needs to ask his parents if he wants to find out what it is. Which obviously brings into question the argument between doing the right thing and doing the thing that you're required to by your job. I'm no expert in medical ethics. I can't speak to how bad what 13 does here is in that regards. But what I am an expert in is queer people. And so I'm going to stand by the bisexual Dr. Lady for finally giving the intersex person the information about themselves that they deserve to know from the start. Ethics be damned.
These aren't vitamins.
What is it?
I can't tell you that. You should ask your parents.
The parents take this to the hospital admin, who decides to keep 13 on the case, arguing that she is part of House's team and an important cog for helping Jackson. In reality, she keeps 13 on because when Jackson finds out that his parents have lied to him for years about who he is, about a foundational part of his life, the only person that he will trust is the one who gave him the ability to know the truth.
No, you won't. In about 15 minutes, you're the only person that kid's gonna trust. If he needs a hand to hold, make sure yours is available.
A pretty perceptive understanding of how children work. They don't like being lied to. Jackson then proceeds to not take finding out about his intersex condition all that well, because we live in a society that teaches intersex people to feel like freaks and wrong. But his parents are reassuring and attempt to convince him that it isn't a problem. However, that whole lying to him for years has clearly weakened the bonds of trust between child and parents, as it will do, and as it would have done at any point they revealed it, only honestly getting more damaging the longer they waited, because at least now they can work to rebuild their relationship with Jackson.
You've known this since I was born, and you never told me.
We didn't want you to be confused.
So you lied to me.
13 then uses that whole position as Jackson's only adult he trusts right now to get him to open up to her about stuff. Like how he's now worried the way he feels about one of his guy friends could be more than just friendship. A worry that is part of how gender and biological sex and sexual orientation have been so fused together in the cis binary that breaking out of that in any way, shape or form confuses and adds concern on all of that stuff that you previously might have just dismissed or taken as given.
I have this one friend, my basketball team. Well, we hang out a lot. I really like him. Now I'm worried that I, like.
It's difficult, but it is something worth going through, if only so you can better come to understand yourself. And Jackson is clearly thinking about themselves in terms of this gender stereotyping, and the fact that they don't know their gender anymore. 13 does an honestly incredibly mediocre job at responding to the gender stuff. Like, why wouldn't she reveal at this point, oh, it's okay for you to be into guys, and that doesn't stop you from being a guy if that's how you feel. Like, I'm a bisexual woman, I'm into women, it doesn't make me a man to be into women. She seems to be a lot more focused on the suicide/depression note, which we then discover the reason for that focus is because, plot twist, Jackson never really felt that way. And it was just a writing assignment to do a style like Sylvia Plath.
This was an English assignment.
A poet renowned for being depressed as fuck, and also for having bisexual themes in her writings. Though pretty much every poet has bisexual themes in their writings, so that's hardly unique or means anything. This discovery shocks 13, as she realizes that maybe she made the wrong choice, because this kid wasn't actually sad or questioning themselves at all, and maybe it would have been better for them to stay in the dark. Look, House has 45-minute long episodes. There have to be like at least 4 to 5 twists in each one to justify the length. Otherwise, this shit would have just ended like 5 minutes ago. The kid then vomits blood, which I'm pretty certain is a bad thing, and it turns out that this can be one of two things, considering all the elements of the case. Either Sklibber-Dibblebler or Sally Dressen's son.
Salinger Ellison?
Or systemic scleroderma.
Look, they're just saying words to me, okay? This is meaningless, and I'm the child of a nurse. I've heard this kind of shit before. The important thing for us as the audience is that one of them can be cured, and one of them is fatal. And 13 is pushing for it to be the non-fatal one, because she feels bad that she fucked up this family dynamic right before the kid might just die of a horrific medical condition.
Patients die all the time.
Not the ones whose family you've ruined. I don't think that. You do.
To be fair, the person who fucked up that family dynamic was the doctor from the beginning when the child was born. But he isn't around for the show to blame, and a lot of medical practitioners and medical shows do still kind of ascribe to the very belief system that led that doctor to doing surgery on a child in the first place, and treating their intersex status as something to be fixed. I don't think House is going the route of telling us, the audience, that intersex people should live as themselves. I mean, it's hard to say till we see the conclusion, but as it stands right now, the parents and that original doctor don't seem to be the villains of the episode. Like, we're not told to think badly of them for hiding all this, or to fix Jackson when he didn't need to be fixed. It turns out that Jackson is unfortunately sick with the bad one. I don't know which one that is. I think it could be the but he is dying, effectively.
He hasn't responded to the medication at all?
I'm afraid not.
That means he's got the other thing.
I'm so sorry.
And the mother is very mad at 13, because in her eyes she ruined their family at a critical moment when they might stop being a family soon because one of them might be dead. I mean, the mother isn't wrong here, but I'm still going to stand by the bisexual doctor lady, because the queers gotta stick together. Sorry. It's also odd how during her speech, she starts her concern with herself and its impact on her, rather than the everything else happening here.
My son has a death sentence, and I can't go in there and be with him because of you.
And I get it. When you find out your kid is going to die, you probably are not thinking or talking clearly, but still, it was just some weird positioning that I noticed in that monologue. You know who I feel bad for here? I feel bad for Jackson. Everyone else is kind of all over the place in regards to whether they're good or bad, but the kid is just a kid who deserved better in their entire life in a bunch of ways. But then, 13 realizes something, thanks to a bunch of words said quite quickly that I didn't really catch, honestly. Jackson taking testosterone again has made it look like he has or it's like fixed his kidneys or something.
Testosterone wouldn't help his liver function.
But it could improve his kidney function, which would also lower his AST.
But not in kidneys damaged by scleroderma.
Which means it's not scleroderma.
Look, whatever this medical jargon means, what it translates to is that it's not he isn't dying, okay? They take all of this back to House, who then has his revelation moment about what it really is, because there are 4 minutes left in the episode, and that's what the formula demands happen at this point, so we can wrap this all up, which is that Jackson drinks too many energy drinks and was just dehydrated.
That's where the energy drinks came in. Put a strain on his kidneys, so he needed more time to rebound from the initial dehydration.
A dehydration that hurt his kidneys and that made him pass around bad stuff from the other tests that the doctors did because the parents told them to do it at the start, and House was feeling kind that day because he was high on fucking drugs, so he just went along with it rather than going off his own gut instinct of ignoring the parents. Like I said, House puts it as their freaked out overprotectiveness that almost killed their child. But put the kid on dialysis for a few weeks and he'll be okay. He also says this.
You gave birth to a freak of nature. Doesn't mean it's a good idea to treat him like one.
For fuck's sake, House. And this episode ends with 13 talking to Jackson about how his parents have backed off a little bit on being restrictive around what stuff he can get up to, with there being this little line about how he can do both basketball and dance if he wants, which is probably some kind of metaphorical theme that ties into the whole intersex narrative, and that's it.
This is the only me you get.
Now, how does this compare to Skin Deep? Well, at least it's more of a definitively intersex episode. Rather than the intersex thing being used as a punishment / final twist for the patient at the end, it's established from the very beginning. The episode also seems to end on the note that we should treat intersex people as humans and let them choose to do whatever they want to do, but there is also no real indictment at all during the episode of the way that the medical system and the binary biological expressions that many people cling to have huge ramifications and ruin the lives of intersex people. We see bits of how it does that, but we're not given any real hints as an audience towards what our opinion should be on those. Some shitty statements are also still said, and slurs too, all of which would add to making this remain an uncomfortable experience. And digging into the episodes, I could find no evidence that the writers or the directors had consulted with intersex people or experts on the appropriate way to incorporate this community into their show, which frankly does explain a lot, and is a consistently recurring theme in why shows keep getting minorities so damn wrong. Alongside this, neither of the actors involved were intersex either, which can be a problem because having actors involved who know that experience allows them to better reflect the attitudes and influence the scripting that goes on around that minority, as well as it being difficult for many minorities to find a purchase in the acting industry, when even the roles that they would be perfect for get snapped up by others. House does many things wrong when it comes to these intersex episodes, and all the things that it does wrong reflect its flawed approach to medical practices that have become mainstream understandings of biology and human bodies and the way that people approach intersex lives and children. It didn't cause these issues, but it certainly helped to repeat them for a wider audience. Issues that also affect trans people too, in regards to how they relate to shared overlapping areas of bigotry and binary oppression. Which is why I wanted to make these intersex episodes a mainstay of my video here. Partly also because the trans stuff just doesn't exist. So, I had to do something. With that said, I now want to move on to talking about the transgender stuff that does exist within House. Not just areas where trans issues intersect with another group. And the reason why I'm doing it afterwards is because trans people well and truly are an afterthought in this show. The two episodes we're looking at are Euphoria from Season 2 and Nightfall from Season 6. Starting us off at the beginning, Season 2's episode 20, Euphoria, Part 1, is about a cop with weed and some disease and pigeon shit or some stuff. Look, it's all literally completely irrelevant, except for the cop part, because in the police officer's police station, we see an individual being questioned by a cop for something, who gives House a look and is on screen for about 3 seconds, and that's it. Oh, you thought there might be some more of anything for us to latch onto and to work with here, but no. What we have is a character who could be a trans woman, they could be a drag queen, they could be kind of anything, really. All we've got is that they are credited in the episode as transvestite, and that it's played by a man. I can't even really tell you if it's offensive or not. They don't speak a single word, and we would only be making assumptions about them, the same kind of assumptions that presumably House's predominantly cis audience would make about this man wearing makeup and a dress and a wig in a police station. Probably not good assumptions, and more than likely stereotypes that tie into how trans people are often presented as on the opposite side of the law as sex workers. Our next episode, Season 6, Episode 18, Nightfall, is set around a Renaissance fair, and like classical night jewels and stuff, real LARPing nerd shit. And I do honestly kind of love that stuff. What I don't love is how the trans person Sarah is introduced into the episode. As House turns up to meet Wilson, his doctor friend who is his Watson to his Holmes, and his new partner, Sam, who is Wilson's first ex-wife that House never met. And to this dinner date, House brings a transgender sex worker.
We're in the middle of a restaurant. What could he possibly do?
Sorry, Willie. But you know girls, always fiddling with the hair and the makeup.
Who is also, let's clear this up now, played by a man. See yet again the recurring problem of having that happen. 1, transgender actors struggle to get into the industry. 2, having men play trans women implies to the audience that trans women are really just men in dresses. 3, trans women playing trans women lets them have some influence on acting the character in a way that is more accurate and relatable. But the scene specifically plays out with Sam and Wilson both aghast to see this trans woman at their nice fancy dinner date, which is clearly the intention of House with hiring her in the first place for this.
I know, isn't it amazing?
Yeah, delightful.
Ignore him. He's just upset that we're having fun.
And that's it. I mean, she's genial and well-mannered, but at the end of the day, our purpose in this scene was a stunt and an object for House, performing in the roles that trans women get relegated to so often. Shock value for cis audiences and sex workers because that is the stereotyped job we get to work when we're not busy being serial killers or fucking dead. There isn't much to say here because there just isn't much going on here. I think you see why I made the intersex episodes a larger focus, because all we get otherwise when discussing trans representation is the same boring, bland, transphobic inserts that do nothing different to what every other shitty show was using us for at the time. In these creations, trans people aren't even people. They're background fluff, or a funny bit, or the crutch for someone else's joke or comedy. We don't get to be more than that. So, with all of that said, and all of that looked at, what do I think of House? I think it was a bad show. A bad show that was indicative of a lot of the problems at play in media of that time period, and that consistently used House as a way of saying or doing terrible things while implying that he is sort of right, but he just comes across as crueler or meaner because of the pain he has to deal with, making him blunt.
I was not wrong. Everything I said was true. It fit. It was elegant.
So reality was wrong.
Reality is almost always wrong.
Ultimately, it's spreading misinformation about intersex people and intersex lives. It's engaging in damaging rhetoric that reinforces the binary biological enshrining, which has consistently fucked over intersex and trans people. House was bad, and I think that a lot of people focus on the scenes that are considered the jumping the shark moments, rather than understanding that from the beginning it was flawed, and designed to be hostile to people outside of the mainstream audience. That's not a good show in retrospect, and not one that you should be taking notes from or learning from, except for learning what not to do. Anyway, if you've liked what I said here, or enjoyed this analysis, or learned something from my commentary, then that's great. It's exactly what I want to happen, and consider leaving a like, share, subscribe, and comment to show that fact. It might just remind the algorithm that some people do like watching my content. If you really like what I do here, then the best way to show that is by making the world a better place for intersex people, via improving the medical practices and the system that encourages horrifying invasive procedures to enforce binary attitudes on people with zero medical requirements for it. That would really make me feel better if we could stop doing that. Otherwise, you can also subscribe on my Patreon and here on YouTube to help give me a more consistent income to rely on for paying stuff like rent or food or electricity or internet, because there is a lot of things that I need to survive and to make these videos that are not covered by the government or the country I live in for some reason, which makes me feel a little bit like they maybe want people to just die. The names of those in the $5 and up category should be scrolling past the screen right now, and I really do appreciate everyone there for helping to make this something that I do as a job. This thing that I love doing, and I would love to keep doing until I finally have covered every single moment of trans or even close to trans representation, and not even that close really, but sort of adjacent-ish in some way, representation. If I can do that till I die, I would be a happy person. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you have a great day.